In this video, I'm going to show you how I made this shot here.
Moose. Come here. Get hold. Oh my god. Get hold.
And I did all of that with stuff that I had laying around the house. And a GoPro. Well, this is the rig that I've come up with. You can see here there's a swiveling section with a bolt that goes through. I've got a little wing nut on there. This is just an old caster. Here's a similar caster that I used. I used a grinding wheel and I took off that rivet right there. As you can see, it's not a bolt or a screw, so I had to grind that off. Actually, I take that back. I think I used a hacksaw and I cut the axle. Either way, either one will work. And once you have the wheel removed, what you wind up with is just the ball bearing part and this little axle that you'll have to remake out of a threaded bolt. I attached that caster to an old piece of bed liner. This has so many different applications. You've got a straight ridged part, which I've used, and then you got perfectly flat parts, and then you got the part around the wheel well, which is rounded, and that proved pretty useful in this case. On the bottom of that I used some padding, because this goes directly on top of my head. I had used a helmet. This is actually a hard hat from a construction site. You can see the holes in the top. I tried attaching it to the top of that. This proved to be too big to take out on the kayak with me. With this here, it took up a lot less space. When it's all tucked away like this, I could just put it inside the toolbox on my kayak and it fit in there with plenty of room for all my other stuff. And one other advantage is that it sat lower on my head than the hard hat, and it added a little more stability. And speaking of stability, this strap here is meant to go under my chin and it holds it down firmly on my head. You can see this is just an old dog collar, and I sewed the pieces together with a needle and thread. It's got an adjusting loop in it. You can just look at any strap that has an adjusting loop to figure out how they work. And that's it. There's no clasps or anything. It's just sewed directly onto the bed liner. I put a hole in there with a Dremel and fed the strap through it and then sewed it secure. And it goes to the other side here, just like that. That holds it steady on my head. Onto the axle point of the caster goes the armature that the camera is attached to. You can see this is a PVC. Where the pieces come together, I drilled a hole, and that bolt with the wing nut there will go through there, and this is going to pivot up and down on that axle, and it'll spin on the ball bearings of the caster. On this end here, I just have a GoPro attachment. Any number of attachments will work. And on the other far end of the PVC, I have a bunch of nuts and bolts that are bolted onto the very end of it there, and that's just to ballast the weight. Notice the back side of it from here over is shorter than from the center point to way out where the camera is. Now, if you decide to build one of these things, you'll notice here that the entire assembly is fairly well balanced, and that's important. That the weight of the camera and the housing is balanced with the ballast in the back. You can always add extra screws and nuts and bolts or whatever you're using for ballast. And that's so that you're balanced well on that center point there.